I found out my husband emptied our joint account the day before I gave birth, but karma caught up with him in ways he never saw coming. The notification came at 2:47 a.m. on a Wednesday. I was 8 months and 3 weeks pregnant, lying in bed, unable to sleep because our daughter kept pressing against my ribcage like she was already trying to break free. My phone buzzed with a banking alert. Unusual activity detected on your joint account. I swiped it open, expecting maybe a fraudulent charge, a mistaken transaction, something fixable. What I saw made my blood run cold. Withdrawal: $47,312. Our entire savings. The account balance now read $83.42. I blinked, thinking my pregnancy brain was playing tricks on me. I refreshed the app 3 times. The numbers didn't change. My husband Marcus was asleep beside me, snoring softly, one hand draped across his chest. The same man who had held my hand through every ultrasound, who had assembled the nursery furniture with such careful precision, who had promised me just last week that everything was ready, that we were ready, that our daughter would want for nothing. I sat there in the dark, phone screen glowing, feeling our baby shift inside me. And something inside me shifted too. Something fundamental and irreversible. I didn't wake him up. I didn't scream or cry or demand explanations. Instead, I took screenshots. Every transaction from the past 6 months. Then I quietly got out of bed and walked to his office. His laptop was still open. He never logged out, always trusted me completely. Ironic, considering what I was about to discover. I opened his email and started scrolling. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. There were messages to someone named Gabriella. Lots of messages. They started innocent enough. Work correspondence, casual conversation. But then they changed, became more frequent, more intimate, more expensive. I saw receipts for jewelry I'd never seen. Hotel reservations for weekends when he claimed to be at conferences, plane tickets, romantic dinners at restaurants I'd suggested for our anniversary that he said were too expensive. And then I found it. The email that explained everything. The $47,000 wire transfer. He'd sent our entire savings to Gabriella. The message was simple. Here's the down payment for the apartment like we discussed. Can't wait to start our new life together. I'll tell her after the baby comes. Give me just a few more weeks to figure out the timing. I sat in his office chair, my hands resting on my enormous belly, and felt our daughter kick. Strong, insistent kicks. Like she was trying to tell me something. Like she already knew her father was planning to abandon us. The rage came then. Not hot and explosive, but cold and calculating. The kind of anger that doesn't cloud judgment but sharpens it. I spent the rest of that night planning. By the time the sun came up, I had photographed every email, every receipt, every incriminating message. I had contacted a divorce attorney whose number I'd gotten from a friend months ago. Just in case, she'd said. You never know. I'd laughed then. Told her Marcus and I were solid. That we were about to be parents. That nothing could shake what we'd built together. How naive I had been. When Marcus woke up at 7, I was in the kitchen making breakfast like nothing had happened. He kissed my forehead, rubbed my belly, asked how we slept. Like we were already a team. Like he wasn't planning to dissolve that team the moment our daughter took her first breath. Fine, I lied, sliding scrambled eggs onto his plate. Baby kept me up a bit. He made a sympathetic noise and sat down with his coffee. His phone was on the table between us. It buzzed with a text. I saw the name flash across the screen. Gabriella. My hand tightened around my fork, but I kept my expression neutral. Is that work? I asked casually. He grabbed the phone quickly. Yeah, just the usual morning chaos. Nothing important. He deleted the message without reading it in front of me. Smooth. Practiced. How many times had he done this before? That morning, I went to my scheduled doctor's appointment alone. Marcus claimed he had an important meeting he couldn't miss. The same excuse he'd been using for months. My doctor told me I was progressing well, that the baby could come any day now, that I should make sure my hospital bag was ready and my support system was in place. Support system. I almost laughed. Instead, I asked her what happens if someone experiences severe stress right before delivery. She gave me a concerned look, explained about blood pressure and complications, advised me to stay calm and avoid stressful situations. Too late for that, I thought. After the appointment, I didn't go home. I went to the bank. I told them about the unauthorized withdrawal. They were sympathetic, but explained that since it was a joint account, technically he had every right to withdraw the money, even all of it. Even the money I had contributed from my own job before I went on maternity leave. Even the money we'd been saving for years specifically for this baby. But the banker, a middle-aged woman named Patricia, looked at my pregnant belly and then at the transaction history. She leaned forward, lowered her voice, and told me something interesting. If I wanted to open a new account in just my name, I could do that today. And if any money came in from my employer, from gifts, from anywhere, I could have it deposited there instead, where he couldn't touch it. I opened the account immediately. Then I called my mother. I hadn't planned to tell her what was happening, but when she answered, her voice so warm and concerned, asking about her grandbaby, I broke down. I told her everything. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then my mother, who had always been soft-spoken and gentle, said something I'll never forget. "Sweetheart, you're about to bring a baby into this world. That takes strength most people can't imagine. And if you can do that, you can do anything, including leaving a man who doesn't deserve you. Pack a bag tonight. Don't tell him where you're going. When that baby comes, you call me, and I'll be there. But he doesn't get to be there. He doesn't get to witness the miracle he's already abandoned." She was right. That night, while Marcus was in the shower, I packed a small bag. Not obvious things he'd notice. Just essentials. Documents. The flash drive with all the evidence I'd collected. Some clothes. I hid it in the nursery closet behind boxes of diapers. Then I went to bed and waited. 2 days later, at 3:15 a.m., my water broke. The contractions started almost immediately, intense and close together. I woke Marcus up. His reaction was perfect. Concerned, excited, loving. He jumped out of bed, grabbed the hospital bag we'd prepared together, helped me to the car. He held my hand as another contraction hit, told me to breathe, that everything would be okay, that he loved me. I looked at him in the dim light of our bedroom and felt nothing. No love, no anger, just a cold, clear certainty that this was the last time I would ever believe anything he said. We got to the hospital just after 4. The staff was efficient and kind. They got me into a delivery room, hooked up to monitors, checking my progress. I was already 6 centimeters dilated. "Moving fast," the nurse said. "This baby wants to meet you." Marcus sat beside me, still playing the devoted husband. He posted on social media, "Baby Day. Send good vibes." His phone kept buzzing with congratulations and well wishes from friends and family who had no idea what he'd done, what he was planning to do. Then, during a particularly brutal contraction, his phone rang. He glanced at it and his face changed. Just for a second, but I saw it. Panic, guilt. "I need to take this," he said, already standing. "It's work. They know I'm at the hospital, but it's urgent. I'll be quick." He stepped out into the hallway. Through the small window in the door, I watched him pace as he talked, his free hand gesturing animatedly. He looked stressed, angry, even. Not like someone dealing with a work crisis, like someone whose 2 lives were colliding at the worst possible moment. When he came back 10 minutes later, I was being checked again. 8 centimeters. Almost time to push. The nurse smiled. "Dad, you picked quite a day to become a father. Your daughter's not wasting any time." He smiled back, but it didn't reach his eyes. He was distracted now, kept checking his phone. I knew why. Gabriella must have been losing her mind. Her devoted boyfriend disappeared into a hospital with his pregnant wife, and he wasn't answering her desperate messages. Another contraction hit, and this time I let myself scream. Not just from the pain, but from everything. The betrayal, the lies, the utter destruction of the future I'd imagined. The nurse squeezed my hand. "You're doing great, Mama. Almost there. Just a little bit longer." But Marcus's phone kept buzzing, again and again. Finally, he silenced it completely and shoved it in his pocket. "I'm here," he said, taking my hand. "I'm right here with you." His hands were sweating. I could feel them trembling slightly. Was it nerves about becoming a father, or fear that his carefully constructed double life was about to implode? At 7:23 a.m., after 3 hours of labor, I pushed our daughter into the world. She came out screaming, healthy and perfect. The nurses cleaned her off and placed her on my chest, and when I looked down at her tiny, furious face, I felt a love so fierce it physically hurt. And I made her a silent promise. "I will never let anyone hurt you. Not ever." Marcus was crying, real tears, streaming down his face as he looked at our daughter. For a moment, I almost believed he loved us. That maybe I'd been wrong. That maybe there was an explanation. Then his phone buzzed again in his pocket, and the spell broke. "Can I hold her?" he asked softly. I hesitated, but the nurse was already reaching for the baby. "Dad needs his turn," she said cheerfully. She placed our daughter in his arms, and he stared down at her with wonder. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She looks just like you. She has your nose." My mother arrived an hour later. I'd texted her the moment our daughter was born. She burst into the room with flowers and balloons, her eyes immediately finding mine. "How are you, sweetheart?" Not "how's the baby?" Not "congratulations." "How are you?" Because she understood. Marcus stood up, still holding the baby. "Mrs. Chen, meet your granddaughter. We haven't picked a name yet, but we're close." My mother took the baby from him, and her expression was ice. "Actually, Marcus, I'd like to speak with my daughter privately for a moment. You know, first-time grandma emotions. Would you mind giving us a few minutes?" He looked confused but nodded. "Of course. I need to make a few calls anyway. Let people know she's here." He kissed my forehead and left the room. The moment the door closed, my mother locked it. Then she walked over to my bedside and handed me her phone. It was open to a news article. "Local tech executive arrested for embezzlement." I stared at the headline, then at the photo. "Marcus, my husband, arrested." The article explained that his company had been investigating financial irregularities for weeks, that Marcus had been diverting company funds into personal accounts, that the total amount stolen was over $200,000, that he'd been arrested just an hour ago when he stepped outside the hospital to make phone calls. I looked up at my mother in shock. "How did you know?" "I didn't," she said quietly. "But your father has connections at the police department. When you told me what Marcus did, I asked him to look into it. Just in case. They'd already been building a case. Your phone call just gave them a reason to move faster. They arrested him in the parking lot." Our daughter started fussing in my mother's arms. She handed her back to me, and I held her close, breathing in her perfect new baby smell. "So he's not coming back?" I asked. "Not for a long time," my mother confirmed. "The prosecutor told your father they have evidence of multiple fraudulent transfers, wire fraud, tax evasion. He's looking at serious prison time." "And our money? The $47,000? She smiled grimly. "Already frozen by the court. It'll be returned once they sort out all his accounts. Plus, he won't be able to hide assets in the divorce. The criminal investigation opens up everything." I started crying then. Not sad tears, but relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. My mother sat on the edge of my hospital bed and put her arm around me. "You and this baby are going to be just fine. Better than fine. You're going to build a life he can't touch." Over the next few days, the story unfolded in pieces. Marcus had been stealing from his company for over a year. The money he'd sent to Gabriella? She'd been in on it. They'd been planning to flee the country together, using stolen money to start over somewhere without extradition treaties. The apartment he'd mentioned was in Portugal. He'd been preparing to abandon his pregnant wife and newborn daughter to escape prosecution. But Gabriella, it turned out, wasn't quite as loyal as he'd thought. When the police arrested Marcus, they also brought her in for questioning. She immediately flipped. Gave them everything in exchange for immunity. Every email, every transaction, every detail of their plan. Marcus was going to leave me the day after the baby was born. He'd already had plane tickets booked. One for him, one for her, dated 3 days after my due date. The prosecutor told my lawyer that Gabriella had been horrified when she learned Marcus was married with a baby on the way. She'd believed his story that he was divorced, that his ex-wife was vindictive and kept him from seeing his kids, that he needed to escape to protect himself. When she discovered the truth, that he was actively married, with a pregnant wife about to give birth, something in her snapped. She'd believed she was helping her boyfriend escape an abusive situation. Instead, she was helping him abandon his family. Her testimony became the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. The frozen assets were gradually returned to me. The $47,000 from our joint account. Another $63,000 from a secret account I hadn't known existed. Money that was technically marital property. With his criminal conviction, I had leverage in the divorce that most people only dream of. My lawyer was ruthless. Full custody, child support from any money he might eventually earn. A settlement that included liquidating all his assets. Marcus's family tried to reach out, His mother called me, crying, begging me to let her see the baby. "Your son emptied my bank account while I was pregnant," I told her calmly. "Then he tried to flee the country. If you want a relationship with your granddaughter, you'll need to wait until she's old enough to decide for herself." She hung up sobbing. I felt nothing. 6 weeks after giving birth, I moved into a new apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. My name only on the lease. My mother helped me set up the nursery. We painted the walls a soft yellow, hung pictures of elephants and giraffes, built the crib together while my daughter slept in her bassinet, tiny fists curled beside her face. I named her Hope, because that's what she gave me. Hope that I could survive this, that I could build something good from something terrible. That karma, as they say, really does catch up with people who deserve it. Marcus was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. With good behavior, maybe 6. By the time he got out, Hope would be in elementary school. She'd have no memory of him, no attachment to a father who'd valued money and his mistress more than his own daughter. Gabriella disappeared after the trial. I heard through the legal grapevine that she'd moved to another state, changed her name, started over with the weight of what she'd been part of hanging over her. I wondered sometimes if she thought about us, about the pregnant woman whose life she'd helped destroy. But mostly, I didn't think about her at all. The first few months of single motherhood were brutal. There's no other word for it. Hope had colic. She'd scream for hours, and nothing I did seemed to help. I was exhausted, overwhelmed, running on coffee and determination. But I wasn't alone. My mother came over almost every day. My friends rallied around me. My neighbor, an older woman named Pearl who'd raised 5 kids by herself, became an unofficial grandmother figure. She'd knock on my door at 8 p.m. when she heard Hope crying through the walls. "Go take a shower," she'd say, taking the baby from my arms. "I've got her." And she did. She'd walk Hope around my tiny living room, humming old songs, while I stood under hot water and cried. Sometimes from exhaustion, sometimes from relief, sometimes from anger at what Marcus had done. But always, with the knowledge that I was doing this, I was surviving. When Hope was 4 months old, I went back to work. My company had been supportive throughout everything. They'd let me work remotely part-time while I recovered and adjusted. My boss, a woman who'd been through her own messy divorce, told me something I'll never forget. The best revenge is building a life so good they regret ever leaving it. So that's what I did. I threw myself into my career with new intensity. I got a promotion 6 months after returning, then another one. I started saving money again, this time in an account only I controlled. I bought a small house when Hope was 2. Nothing fancy, but it had a yard where she could play and a room that was just hers. We'd survived. More than that, we were thriving. Marcus sent letters from prison. I never opened them. I had them forwarded to my lawyer, who reviewed them for anything legally relevant and then filed them away. He had no right to my attention anymore, no claim to my emotional energy. He'd made his choice when he wired our savings to his mistress, when he planned to abandon his newborn daughter. Actions have consequences, and his consequences were playing out exactly as they should. Hope's 3rd birthday was on a Sunday. We had a small party in our backyard. My mother, my close friends, Pearl from next door with her adult children and grandkids. We had a princess castle cake because Hope was obsessed with castles. She wore a pink dress with sparkles and a plastic tiara. When we sang happy birthday, she clapped her hands and laughed with pure, uncomplicated joy. I looked around at the people who'd shown up for us, who'd supported us through the hardest time of my life, who loved Hope simply because she existed, not because it was convenient or profitable. This was family, not the man in prison who shared her DNA. These people. That night, after everyone left and Hope was asleep, I sat in my living room with a glass of wine. The house was a mess. Wrapping paper everywhere. Cake smashed into the carpet. But I didn't care. For the first time in 3 years, I felt genuinely, completely happy. Not just surviving, not just getting through, but actually happy. My phone buzzed with a notification. An email from my lawyer. Marcus was up for parole review in a few months. They wanted to know if I'd like to submit a victim impact statement. I stared at the message for a long time. Thought about everything he'd put us through. The betrayal, the fear, the struggle. Then I deleted the email. He didn't deserve my words, my anger, my time. He'd already taken enough. Instead, I pulled up photos from Hope's birthday party. Her chocolate-smeared face, Her gap-toothed grin, the way she'd laughed when Pearl's grandson had made funny faces at her, this was what mattered. This life we'd built. This future we were creating. 5 years after that terrible night when I discovered the empty bank account, I was doing better than I ever imagined possible. Hope was in kindergarten, thriving, happy, smart and funny and kind. She asked about her father sometimes. I'd prepared for this, worked with a therapist on how to answer honestly without destroying her sense of security. Your dad made some bad choices, I told her. He hurt people, so he had to go away for a while. But that's not your fault. None of it is your fault. You are loved so much. She'd nodded, processing this in the serious way 5-year-olds do. Then she'd asked if we could have mac and cheese for dinner, and the moment passed. I'd started dating again, cautiously, slowly, a guy I'd met through work. Nothing serious yet, but he was kind, patient, good with hope when I'd finally introduced them. He knew my story. I'd been upfront about the baggage I carried, the trust issues, the fear. He'd listened without judgment, told me we could go as slow as I needed, that he wasn't going anywhere. Marcus was released from prison when Hope was 6. I got a notification from the Victim Services Program. He'd served his full sentence with no parole, which meant no restrictions on where he could go or who he could contact. My lawyer filed an immediate restraining order. He was not to come within 500 feet of me or Hope. No contact of any kind. Violation would send him right back to prison. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd moved to another state, that he was working construction, that he looked older, worn down, that the years in prison had changed him. I felt nothing hearing this. No satisfaction, no pity, nothing. He was a stranger who'd once destroyed my life, but I'd built a new one, a better one, and he had no place in it. Hope is 10 now. She plays soccer, takes piano lessons. Has a tight group of friends who come over for sleepovers where they giggle until midnight. She's never met her father, never asked to. She knows he exists, but he's not real to her in any meaningful way. The man who walks her to school? Who teaches her to ride a bike? Who sits through her terrible piano recitals and applauds like she's performed at Carnegie Hall? That's my boyfriend of 4 years. That's her dad in all the ways that matter. We got married last year. Small ceremony in our backyard. The same backyard where we'd celebrated Hope's 3rd birthday all those years ago. She was our flower girl, beaming in her own princess dress. My mother cried. Pearl cried. I cried. But they were happy tears, grateful tears. Tears for everything we'd survived and everything we'd built. Sometimes I think about that night. The banking notification at 2:47 a.m. The empty account. The life that could have been if Marcus had gotten away with it. If he'd successfully fled to Portugal with his mistress and stolen money. If karma hadn't caught up with him in that hospital parking lot, I would have been destroyed. Broke. Alone with a newborn. Betrayed in the cruelest way possible. But that's not what happened. Instead, I discovered a strength I didn't know I had. I fought back. I built a life. I raised a daughter who will never settle for less than she deserves because she watched her mother refuse to accept betrayal. And Marcus? He lost everything. His family, his career, his freedom, his daughter, all for $47,000 and a woman who turned on him the moment things got hard. The universe has a funny way of balancing the scales. You can lie, cheat, steal. You can betray the people who love you most. You can choose money over family, excitement over responsibility. But eventually, it catches up with you. Eventually, you have to face what you've done. And sometimes, the consequences are more severe than you ever imagined possible. I found out my husband emptied our joint account the day before I gave birth, but karma caught up with him in ways he never saw coming. And I got something far more valuable than money. I got freedom. I got hope. I got a second chance at building a life based on honesty and love. And I got the satisfaction of knowing that the man who tried to destroy me ended up destroying only himself. That's the thing about betrayal. It reveals who people really are. Marcus showed me exactly who he was. A coward. A thief. A man willing to abandon his newborn daughter for a comfortable escape. And I showed him who I was. A survivor. A fighter. A mother who would do anything to protect her child. In the end, we both got what we deserved. He got justice. I got everything.